definition of sex in the Equality Act?
There already is one.
There is an understanding of it. There's not a specific definition.
So sex is if you're a male or a female, and then the definition of man is or if you're a man or a woman, and then the definition of man is a male of any age, and the definition of a woman is a female of any age. They have the definition, but they don't have the clarity.
Haldane judgment interpreted that differently.
Yes, it did. So Haldane...
following the Haldane judgment, would it be helpful if that were revisited?
I think absolutely. The issue with the Haldane judgment as it arises for all of the purposes that we're dealing with here is that up until that point, we were really not sure whether or not sex within the Equality Act, as modified by a GRA, whether or not, one, it actually does modify the Equality Act for the purposes of the claimant. So somebody who has a gender recognition certificate, whether they will be classed as male or female for the purposes of a direct discrimination claim. What the Haldane judgment does is it goes further than that, because it effectively says that the definition of sex in the entire Act becomes legal sex. And that means that single sex spaces become single legal sex spaces. And what it means then is that your justification for exclusion will hinge partially upon whether or not the person is of the characteristic legally that space is. Now, the test is the same. It's still proportionate means of achieving a legitimate aim. But whether or not you are legally the same person of a space or a service that is set up for that legal category, not biological category, will be relevant for determining whether or not exclusion is proportionate.
Right. Lord Faulkner, do you want to comment on that?
I think Michael's making it incredibly complicated. It doesn't change. The Gender Recognition Reform Bill does not change the basis on which you make a determination on whether or not...
No, it changes whether or not you can sue. So the policy arguments will not be changed. You could introduce a policy that bans all males from female prisons if you want, but you could be sued for that. You could be sued for gender recognition discrimination. And the question about whether or not you have a gender recognition certificate changes the nature of that suit that you make from an indirect discrimination claim to a direct discrimination claim, subject to the same justification test. Is it a proportionate means of achieving a legitimate aim? But if you think a court will possibly come to a conclusion that the exclusion of this legal woman who is biologically male is that there is a less onerous way to achieve the legitimate aim of providing security, then the policy will be struck down as unlawful. So if you want to ensure with absolute certainty that no rapist makes it into a woman's jail, you need a blanket ban. And blanket bans can be struck down by courts. You need to legislate to have that ban in place. Policy documents, guidance won't do it because the legislative framework is as it is, and it's hooked onto a proportionality test.